Welcome to the Hunter's Advantage podcast, where a group of budget-minded hunters scour the woods for whitetail bucks and whatever other big game is in season. Tune in each week to hear the hilarious public and private land hunting stories and mistake-filled lessons learned. We believe that every hunt brings us closer to God and that we exist to share the good news. And now, your hosts, Christian Babcock and Jake Gaylord.
Listen, guys, we wouldn't be able to do the podcast if it wasn't for you all. So we just want to say that you guys are greatly appreciated, and thank you for following along each week.
And speaking of support, we are partnered with Out on a Limb Manufacturing, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, Matt and Chase are great, down-to-earth guys, and they make some of the best saddle hunting products out there. Whether you're looking for a set of climbing sticks or a mobile, lightweight, hang-on tree stand, or maybe you're even a one-sticker.
You mean tree Pilates?
Yes, tree Pilates. If you've been to the grocery store or the gas station lately, you know that Uncle Joe is doing his absolute worst to take all your money. That's why we need hunting gear that lasts year after year. And trust me, I've been rocking the same Out on a Limb Shakar climbing sticks for 4 years and the Ridge Runner 2.0 saddle hunting platform for a few years as well. This gear is built to last.
We can confidently say that Out on a Limb is the best bang for your buck.
And it's the best gear if you want to deflate a big old buck.
Ooh. Make sure you use code HNTA15 at outonalimbmfg.com for 15% off anything on their website.
So if you can show them the same support that you guys show us, please go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Joel Burham of Whitetail Fit. Thanks for jumping on with us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Christian and I were talking, and we were like, I think this might be the most scrawny guy we've had on the podcast yet. So, I don't know. The most. That's to be determined.
You probably got the biggest biceps of this podcast we've ever had on. So,
yeah. That's hilarious.
Dude, look at these suckers.
I think it on Instagram, on the internet, and everything. I think it's one of those so I'm kind of short, and it makes me. I don't know why, but literally in person, there's been so many people who've met me. It's like at Total Archery Challenge or whatever else. They're like, man, I thought you'd be taller than you are. And it's like, oh, dang. All right. But yeah,
Christian's the same way, though, too. Trust me.
Yeah, that's how it goes. So how's your summer been going, man? You've been staying pretty busy. Obviously, you've been to a lot of the tax, but what else have you been up to?
Yeah, it's been incredibly busy. The Total Archery Challenges have kept me busy for the most part in terms of content creation. So obviously at the Total Archery Challenges, I film a bunch of videos and stuff and then produce the content for my YouTube channel. And with that, it's a lot of, I don't have any editors. The only other person who helps me out with things, last year I brought on my brother Ethan for the fall, and he helped video, and he did an incredible job. So at Total Archery Challenge, he helps me video, but for the most part on the editing side, I'm still doing the bulk of the editing. Ethan has done a couple of videos, and he's done a really good job, but again, he's got a full-time job, so just time allocation to doing that type of stuff. So when it comes down to that, been pretty busy with that. But then on top of that, been getting ready for deer season. And I have been trying my absolute best to find new properties in Nebraska, which I have been kind of failing with. It's really, really hard to find permission access anymore. So I've been turning back to kind of my roots of looking at more public ground, which I already have my public ground that I really like to hunt, but I want to kind of broaden my horizon a little bit and try a couple of new pieces this year and just to do stuff a little bit different. I always like going to new states and trying new properties. When I go draw Kansas tags and stuff like that, going to Kansas, it's so fun to look at new hunting properties on the public side and trying to figure them out. And I haven't done that really for whitetail in Nebraska the last several years, because I've kind of had my favorite properties that I've been going to, and anymore they're starting to get a little bit more pressure. So I'm just kind of broadening my horizon and checking some new stuff out. So been getting ready with that. The couple of pieces of permission that I do have in Nebraska, been setting cameras, been trying to find bucks that I'm, really excited about chasing. And I've got 2 bucks this year that are really, they're going to be great deer. Both of them are going to be probably in the mid to 150s. Just, I can't tell. It's so hard in the summer sometimes to tell whether they're going to be 4 or 5 years old. I think they're going to be 5. Early on, I would have said 4. Now that they're starting to really fill out, I'm like, those might be 5-year-old deer. So it's been a lot of fun just getting ready for season.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of summer bucks, I just had this conversation the other day with a buddy because I live down in Texas now, and these Texas deer, you want to talk about hard to age a deer. It's like every one of them weighs 120 pounds. And
it's crazy.
in the central Texas, at least. And I know they get a little bit bigger in the south, but people were like, how old is this deer? I'm like, I have no idea. And I use this picture as an example. This is a buck in mid-July. I shot this deer. This is him in mid-July. Let's find him right there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Pretty good looking buck, right?
Yeah.
This is him on October 1st when I shot him. This is how different his body looked.
Oh, he filled out.
Looks like a cow.
That's wild.
I don't even try to age him in the summer anymore.
I know. It's so hard. If I have history with them, I'll know right away, because it's like I've been able to track that deer throughout the past couple of years and at least have like a pretty good idea. Both of these bucks are, I think, new to me, which is weird because it's not this is one of those properties that typically I would have thought, it's a couple hundred acres. I would have thought that I would have known what deer would be moving in and out, but it's also, it gets a lot of pressure. Deer could be pushed in and out. So it's one of those things. I think these are 2 deer that I'm not entirely sure who they are, unless they're a 3-year-old that blew up and it just looks nothing like they did last year. But either way, they're worth hunting, and I'm excited to hunt them. So we're getting after it.
Yeah, your neighbors will be real pleased to know that you'll see them on their profile.
Yeah.
October 1st or whenever y'all season opens. That's usually how I find my deer.
Yeah.
I'm like, awesome. Now I have a 60-incher to hunt. This is great.
There you go. Yep. I love it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And that's the thing for me too, is just finding and chasing, the most mature animal that I can on a given property, whether that be through trail camera data, whether that be through scouting in general, just whether that's preseason, early season, looking at trails and stuff during, even in the winter, like right when season's over, going out and looking at trails and looking for big rubs and stuff like that in the wintertime when all the foliage is off. It's like, man, if a buck's putting a rub down that's that type of size, there should be a deer in here that's going to be, of age. So, yeah, I just love chasing mature deer, and whatever the biggest deer on that property is, that's kind of what I try to go after.
Oh yeah, for sure. what region of Nebraska are you in? Which one of the corners?
The southeast corner. So
okay, southeast Nebraska. Okay, I was just wondering from a foliage, like what it looked like perspective. So are you in a bunch of the prairie type stuff with like the bottom cedars? What does it look like?
No. The southeast portion is a lot of it's farm fields, rolling hills, a lot of tree lines. If you can imagine, I don't know if you've ever been to either Iowa or Missouri.
Yeah.
Think northwest. Literally, it's kind of like the same areas, but think northwest Missouri and think southwest Iowa. That's the kind of terrain that we have around here in southeast Nebraska. So
okay.
It's very like, we do have cottonwood bottoms. We have all the, the lakes, the creek systems, but we just have so much ag ground. We have so much ag ground, and a lot of it's pretty open. Where a lot of the big timber and stuff is even further down southeast. So I'm just south of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
So right around that area is kind of just a bunch of farm fields with tree lines running through them. And every now and then you can get decent sized blocks of trees. But typically people have cattle running through them. And there's always challenges to be, had with these kind of properties around here. But where I mule deer hunt and where I antelope hunt, in Nebraska is further west, and that definitely is like rolling prairies, flat ground, winter wheat fields, like flat as the eye can see where I'm antelope hunting, and so Nebraska offers a lot of different variety and terrain to hunt. So it's really, really fun to be a resident of Nebraska and just explore. There's so much going on in this state as far as hunting and opportunity and stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. The mule deer conservation area, you guys get to hunt that too as a resident, right?
I never have, and I'm not sure if we do. I think we do. I think you are correct. I think we do. I just never have, just because, again, it comes down to those, like the smaller parcels that I'm like so zoned in on. I've never really branched out too much from them because I have good luck on them.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
It's hard for me to get away and hunt the big areas that have, just more pressure. So.
Yeah, I just asked because I've donated a lot of money to Nebraska Parks and Wildlife for the last few years. I did a muzzleloader hunt up there, up at McKelvey. Only reason I can say that is because hundreds of thousands of acres. Like that's not gonna. And then I've done some mule deer.
Sam Kelvey or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And it's they've beat me down pretty good. I had probably 140-inch whitetail at 200 yards with the muzzleloader, and
oh wow,
man, after a week, I was like, I'm about to question my ethics. I'm about to aim high and let it fly, but I didn't. Yeah. But yeah, Nebraska's cool.
I think for that area, like 140-inch whitetails probably pushing your top end deer out in that area, because those rolling hills deer, like, man, you gotta get them. You gotta get some age on them to see some real good, racks on them. And I know people who've shot really big deer in those areas, but just like your average deer is probably more like 120. So, a 140 out there is probably, that's a dang good deer to shoot out there for sure.
Oh yeah. So I'm curious. I know you just wrapped up your tax season, but how did it kind of go this year? It seems like you were all over the place shooting slinging arrows.
Man, it was awesome. So here's how this works. I told myself this year that I was going to go to one. So the last since 2017, I've gone to 3 TAC events every single year, and typically, it's been I guess from 2017 to probably whenever the Oklahoma shoot opened, 2021. I went to 2.
Something
so
like
I'd go to the South Dakota shoot, and then I'd go to the Utah shoot. And now it's the South Dakota, the Utah, and the Oklahoma shoot. So I went to the Oklahoma shoot this year, and I told myself that was the only one I was going to go to, just because, dude, fuel prices with driving to the Western shoots, time away from doing everything else that I want to do in terms of, content creation and scouting and everything else. I'm like, well, trips wise, I probably should bring things down to more of a minimum on that side and just focus efforts into other areas that I want to pursue. And my girlfriend lives in Minnesota. So for me to go see my girlfriend, it's been like travel up there. She comes down here. So it's just like a lot of traveling throughout the year. And anyway, so went to the Oklahoma shoot, had a great time. Like, y'all have been to that shoot, right? Y'all were there last year, right?
Yeah, we've been there every year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So great shoot, obviously, and had a great time. And then we got done with that shoot, and walking on the way out, Sean was there, Sean DeGray. I was talking to Sean on the way out, and he's like, "You coming to Colorado?" I'm like, "Man, I've never been to the Colorado shoot, but I don't know. We'll see with travel and stuff." He's like, "Man, you got to come to Colorado." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." Then I start thinking about it, and then sure enough, Colorado comes around, and it's like, well, probably should go to Colorado. And before that, every year we'd always gone to South Dakota. So my brother and I got together and we're like, why not? Let's just go, So this year we hit Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Colorado, 3-day shoots every shoot, and didn't regret it at all. So much fun. And obviously I love shooting them and filming them and everything on the content side. It's just so much fun to share that with people, because it's like, there's so many people at those shoots who come up and say, I've watched the videos and stuff or whatever, and I didn't know what Total Archery Challenge was or whatever, but they were able to look it up and see what, just watch a video on it. Whoever created a video on it, just watch a video on it. And it's fun to put that stuff out there just because I enjoy archery so much and it's done so much for me in my life that I like sharing that and seeing that, how that works for other people. So, but yeah, tons of fun. I shot incredibly well. I think I shot the best this year than I've probably ever shot. And I don't know why, but these new bows that I'm shooting are just like, they're holding incredibly well, like very minimal pin float. I started messing with my bars, the stabilizer systems this year, a little bit more than I have in the past, and different sight system. I'm running that UV slider this year, and
I gotcha.
They've just been shooting awesome. So it was a lot of fun.
So what bow are you running?
So I am shooting the Hoyt RX8 and the Hoyt Alpha X. So both the aluminum and the carbon. I shot the aluminum at the Oklahoma shoot, and it did great. So here's something that's different with these bows as well, is when I got these bows, they didn't have 80-pound limbs available, and typically I shoot 80 pounds. But these bows, I got these with the 70-pound limbs, and then shot them all summer with the 70-pound limbs. And I actually just got in a set of 80-pound limbs for the Alpha X that I will build for my elk hunting bow. Because again, I'm short, so I have a 27-inch draw length. So for me to shoot, like for elk, I would like to shoot a 480 grain arrow, but for me to shoot where I like to tune between like 280 and 290, 295 feet per second. So to shoot in that range with a 480 grain arrow, I pretty much have to shoot an 80-pound bow because of my draw length. My draw length is so short, I lose so much speed. It's one of those things where it's like, don't need to get stronger, just need to get longer, because the long draw length makes up for like a crazy amount of actual poundage that you're pulling on the bow. There's guys that shoot even 29 inches, 28 and a half inches, and will shoot the same speeds as me with 27 inches and 80 pounds when they're shooting 70, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I can attest to that because I have a 31 and a half inch draw length. It sucks because it takes away like 90% of the bows I can shoot, like right off the top, they're all gone. But I shoot a 31 and a half, and I can shoot a 544 grain arrow 290. And it's like, it's hard for me to build a light arrow because it's so long.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I can also get away with, sometimes I can shoot a really, really light arrow, because when you cut your arrow shafts down to 25 inches carbon to carbon, it stiffens the shaft up quite a bit. So I can run, all the way down to a 400 and, out of the 80-pound bow, I don't like to go too much lower, but 430, 420, 430, or I can run all the way up to, whatever, 510, 520, and be fine in the same range. So it's all in kind of how you build. I like to play with the front end quite a bit with like brass inserts and stuff, and get the weight moved around how I want to on the spine. And but yeah, they've been shooting great, been loving them. And like I say, the Alpha X, I am putting 80-pound limbs on it probably this week. I'll put the 80-pound limbs on it and then get it set up for the elk hunts, because that is coming up very fast.
Oh yeah. So does your tack setup change at all from your hunting setup? Because I've kind of fallen victim to the heavy arrow craze, and I shoot 70 pounds, but I really need to probably be at like 65, 63, something like that. I'm not very strong. And if watching back our tack videos, my draw cycle looks atrocious. I look like a kid, like trying to eat an ice cream cone, if you know what I'm getting at. But so does your tack arrow change at all, or do you just use your hunting rig?
It's gone back and forth over the years. This year was pretty much like, it was more or less a hunting rig setup. The arrows were four. Oh, that's gonna bug me. 1 second, I'm gonna look at an arrow.
He's not a professional. He doesn't even know his arrow weight.
Man, I am.
Goodness.
Okay, so 430. So my arrow setup was 430 this year, shooting it out of a 70-pound bow for Total Archery Challenge. Now, that being said, that's a whitetail killing setup. Like 430 grain arrow out of a 70-pound bow. I would shoot whitetail all day, every day with that setup. For elk, yes, 430 will do it, absolutely. But at 70 pounds, I'd almost rather shoot slightly slower for elk if I'm going to shoot a 70-pound bow and shoot a little bit heavier arrow, more like a 480-ish. So what I'm going to do is when I build the Alpha X with the 80-pound limbs, I'm going to bump up to about a 480 grain arrow for elk. And that'll keep me right in that like 290 feet per second range where I'll tune really, really well. Have great forgiveness, because with a Total Archery Challenge arrow, you don't care about penetration, right? You're shooting foam, so
they can hit it sideways. Who cares?
Right. Yeah. So what you're really looking to do is build an arrow that I think one of the most accurate arrows that I built for Total Archery Challenge was an Easton Sonic, which is I think built out it was like 420 grains or something like that. But it was it was a light arrow. I had 75 grains of brass up front. It bucked the wind really well. And it was light and fast. I was shooting 295 to 300 out of an 80-pound bow with it. That one was shooting 300 plus, actually. That would have been 305 or something in there. But it was fast. So there's a lot of, with a fast arrow, you have a lot more forgiveness in terms of drop at long distance. And obviously at Total Archery Challenge, there's a lot of long distance shots. And so if you really want to shoot for like score and stuff like that at Total Archery Challenge, like if you're shooting against some buddies or whatever and just having a friendly competition between whoever's in your group, I would lean on the side of shooting a faster arrow, just like you would at any 3D tournament. But this last year, like I said, I shot basically what I would whitetail hunt with, and I shot really, really well. So it changes all the time. I'm always messing with stuff.
Yeah, you seem like I've watched some of your videos and heard you on a few podcasts. It seems like you like to tinker with the archery stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's bad. It's bad. I will burn some time in the day messing with bows. Like typically when people have their bows set up, they're like, oh, it's shooting great, it's whatever. Like for no reason, I'll go tie on like 2 or 3 different diameter serving just to see what my knock fit is going to do. And oh, well, let's try tying this one, a 16th high off center from the burger hole and see how it holds a little bit better, whatever. And yeah, so I am constantly messing with stuff. But I think one advantage to that, in the past, I would just have my buddies set up my bows because I had still have a really good buddy. He's awesome. Josh Fallister at Bow Only Outdoors. I don't know if you ever heard of Bow Only.
Yeah. I like their YouTube videos. They do some cool stuff.
So Josh lives in the same town as I do. Micah now lives in Iowa. But so Josh was like the lead bow tech at the Lincoln Shields for like a little while. And he's an incredible archer, knows so much about tuning and the ins and outs of archery, like very, very good at what he does. So I would just have him set my bows up all the way up until maybe, I don't know when I got my bow press, 4 years ago, something like that. 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember. 4 years ago, I think. But up until then, I'd have him set my bows up. So it was like, I kind of knew the ins and outs and the workings of the bow, how everything works, how everything functions. But I got just better as an archer so he left Shields and he took another job and started working elsewhere. So it was like, he would still set up my bows if we got together or whatever. But I got to the point where I'm like, you know what, I should probably have my own bow press. I should start setting up my own bows. And when I did that, I'd already learned so much from Josh about tuning and about setting up bows that it was kind of like just right away I was able to start working on them and kind of knowing what I was doing. And the more that I've worked on them, I've worked on my brother's bows, I've worked on my friend's bows. I get calls from people, hey, can you set this up? Can you tie this in? Whatever. And it's like, yeah, come on over, whatever. And if I have time, I'll help them with it. And by doing that, you just build like an extra layer of knowledge with every bow you work on, towards allowing you to know what's going wrong when something is going wrong with the bow. So before, if I was shooting and missing a little bit, say off to the left or whatever, something weird was going on, in my head, I would just be like, oh, I pulled the shot. But it's like, man, that shot felt really good. Well, after working on bows for a while, if you're starting to see something that's like, man, this thing is really shooting low, I don't know what's going on. And then you go back and you look at your center serving, your center serving is separated and started to walk, causing your D loop to change position, which causes, a low impact. So there's a lot of different things that like now I key in on because I've been working on bows that I'm like, if something's off, it's just like right away, I'm like, something's off, I need to look at this and get it fixed. And it's been, I encourage anybody who can to work on their own bows just because of that fact. It allows you to be a better archer in general, just because of like all the things that you learn and take away from it,
That's funny. We had one of my compounds, I broke a D loop on one time, and my uncle called the neighbor and he came up and tied a D loop on, and I thought he was a magician just watching him tie a D loop on. And then
like,
I learned,
not.
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, man, this guy really knows. I know how to tie one now. But I mean, what do you think from your perspective? You obviously worked on your own bows. You said you've worked on some other people's bows. Like what is the tangible, difference in accuracy versus shooting like an actual tuned bow? Because I would argue there's probably a coin flip out there, 50% shoot a tuned bow, and then there's a lot of people that walk into the woods with no tuning at all. That thing's flying sideways.
Yeah, so here's the thing with that. If you can do the exact same thing every single time, even an untuned bow will typically shoot pretty good. Now, not amazing because it's untuned, it's unforgiving. And that's where when you get into like a really highly tuned bow, you start getting into forgiveness of accuracy versus an untuned bow can lead you, the slightest thing, the slightest movement on your face from your regular anchor point, whatever, can throw the arrow off so much more. And the other thing is tuning your arrows to the bow. I see all over the spectrum, shooting a really, really heavy arrow or shooting a really, really light arrow and having it be too light for the bow. It's underspined, won't paper tune, won't group tune, won't bare shaft tune. So there, I do see it across the board where guys are shooting untuned bows. And that's typically where you get bows that are either set up by a friend who, or given to you by a friend that it was set up for them. And it's like, and in my head, I'm thinking, there's a lot of layers to tune on a bow, but for the most part, a pro shop is going to get you out the door with like a Shields is very good about getting you out the door with like a paper tuned bow. If you ask for it, if you ask Shields, hey, can we get this thing paper tuned? They'll typically take the time to paper tune the bow, make sure your cams are, depending on whatever cam system you have, to your draw length, to the let off weight that you want, your cam synchronization, they'll typically make sure that all works. Now, if you go to, let's say a big box store that screws on a rest, doesn't tune anything and sends you out the door, that bow is not tuned. Like there's a very small percentage chance that they got that rest in the right position and the D loop in the right position and sent you out the door with a bow that's actually shooting correctly. And I think, like I say, I think where you see a lot of that is the error in if you're not doing the exact same thing every single time, your forgiveness falls off with an untuned bow. If you are able to do the exact same thing every single time, like I say, even an untuned bow can shoot pretty good. But you get to really dive in, and like I say, know when something goes wrong, you know what went wrong and why it went wrong right away. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway of working on your own bows and getting something tuned.
Yeah, one of the issues that I had for a long time was just a bow fitting. I mean, archery, when you get into it, people are hammying down bows. You're getting a bow from a friend or an uncle or a dad. And my uncle gave me a bow, and my first, I was probably a 29-inch draw length, and this bow was like 26 inches. I shot my first bow like this for like 3 years, and I was like, God, I'm just not really accurate. And it didn't fit. Yeah, it really makes a difference. Me just switching to because I shot a 30-inch draw length for a long time, and just shooting something that fits was a really, really big deal for my accuracy.
Yeah, 100%. And that's with, with today's bows, there is so much you can do with like fine tune adjustments and making sure that you have draw length is such a big factor. Like you just touched on, but it is like, if you're too short, you're too collapsed. If you're too long, you're too extended. And both of those scenarios, you're getting away from a stable muscle and skeletal structure of holding a bow accurately. If you're if you're way overextended, it's really, really hard for like everything to align. And I'm talking about alignment of your shoulder to your wrist to the bow, this shoulder, elbow coming back, for your follow through, and just how you're able to hold with your skeletal structure being all in line. And a lot of people don't, they don't even know what their draw length is. It's like, I don't know, I'm just shooting whatever, and it seems to be working. And the thing is, typically, if they shoot it long enough, it'll probably work for them.
Yeah.
And but like I say, it's kind of that like the light bulb that goes off when you get a bow that is set up exactly perfect for you and for how you hold your release and where you want that, that string touching your nose, that arrow coming out of that pocket below your lip, above your chin. Like when you get something set up, it's like the light bulb, like I say, that goes off. It's like, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel at full draw. I don't feel like I'm collapsed anymore. I don't feel like I'm overextended, and this is the pocket, and then you kind of can start working from there. But yeah, there's a lot of, when I was younger, my first bow ever, when I started bow hunting when I was 12, I bought a Alpine Micro. So I don't think Alpine is even in business anymore, but it was like a youth hunting bow. The limbs maxed out at like 45 pounds. But the draw length would go from 20, I don't even know, 23, 20, like really, really low, all the way up to, I think it went up to like 29 inches. It was like a huge spectrum cam, and it was as sloppy as it gets, like no back wall. You get back and you could still kind of pull it back a little bit, but I didn't know I didn't know anything. At that time, I didn't know anybody who shot a bow. I was intrigued by it through the videos that I'd go and get all the old Monster Buck videos and stuff at Kmart when they were on discount back when it was like VHS tapes,
Mm-hmm.
And I just binge watched that stuff. I got so infatuated with it. And anyway, when I started shooting a bow, wanting to hunt with a bow, I got set up with that thing, and we ordered it in the mail, and it like came to the door. Didn't know what, it was just like, oh, like, let's set this up, whatever. No D-loop. I shot it with fingers. I didn't even have gloves or a finger tab. I shot raw fingers off of it. No peep sight. Didn't know what a peep sight was. I shot a full-length Walmart arrow shaft, which was like 31 inches. And I shot a Walmart Allen broadhead. And I got good enough to where I could hit like a block target. Think like a standard, block or bag target, whatever. I could hit that at 20 yards, and I'm talking about hitting the target, like not like a dot on the target, just hitting the target at 20 yards. And I didn't know I had no idea what I was doing. but I was having fun and I was shooting a bow and I was hitting a target. So go through hunter's education, all this stuff. It's time to go hunting. I ended up, my first deer was 28 yards and I smoked it double lung with fingers, with no peep sight, full length Walmart arrow, $9 Allen broadhead. Like, it was just one of those things that was like, that was meant to be. I was meant to kill that deer. Like, the arrow found its mark somehow, and it wasn't because of me, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
I think that's how every first deer has been shot. Like, everybody seems like when you first shoot at a deer, you just black out, and all of a sudden you find a dead deer, and you're like, hallelujah, praise God. But
absolutely. That's, you know, I guess I'm referencing back to that fact of like, you can still have so much fun and go hunting and not have to have like the most dialed setup in the world. You know, I think it's important to be accurate, and I think it's important to the ethics of killing an animal to do everything in your power to be accurate. But you know, it's just, it kind of comes down to just getting out and shooting your bow and putting your time in behind your bow and knowing what your bow is doing, how it's going to shoot, how you're going to react when something goes wonky, how you can correct it, you know, just time spent on the range. But yeah, to say all that, everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah,
and you can still kill early when you don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be my story. It's like, okay, or I guess Christian and I both, we're introduced into hunting through like, first we went out with our rifle, and then we got a hand-me-down bow from either someone's uncle, or we borrowed it from a friend or something like that. And all we were doing is shooting, kind of like what you were saying, Walmart arrows, or we'd find some old aluminum arrows out of your dad's closet and just use whatever broadheads we found laying around, right? And it seems like the better equipment we got, the worse hunters we become, or at least me. Because like here in 2020, like it seemed like every deer I seen, like they just got COVID or something and dropped dead, right? And now I couldn't buy a deer right now, or at least that's what it seems like for like the last 2 years. But I plan on changing that. Long story short, new and good equipment does not always mean, you know, more deer.
No,
and for sure.
You know, it's funny because there's definitely something to that, because there is a little bit of overthinking that can go into like your shot process and everything. When you really start dialing in, you kind of have, not that you have to go like all in to be really good at it, but it helps you to really dive in deep and go down the rabbit hole like I have for years. It takes a lot of time, but it's fun. But there is something to, like, I guess I would say the infancy stage of archery. There is something to that, because you don't even know what a bad habit is. You don't know what's going wrong. You're just there and you're pulling a trigger, and it's hitting what it's supposed to hit. And one thing that I found with that, that was like a perfect example of it, was this last year. I got my girlfriend Alyssa into archery, and what I did was I set up I had a Hoyt Ventum Pro that was 80 pounds. I swapped 40-50 pound limbs onto it for her so that she can shoot a 40-pound limb, something that she could pull back easier, and brought the draw length down to 25 inches and got it set up for her. And dude, out the gate, I mean, I got her to where it's like, here's how you should be anchoring with your trigger release. You know, here's a peep sight, touch your nose to the string, align the housing, watch your bubble, your wrist position, your shoulder, everything. I helped her with that stuff out the gate. And I mean, right away, she was shooting like well enough to kill a deer, like well enough to where I'd be like, yeah, I'd take her hunting right now. And it was like right away. And I think there's something to the fact that, like, she doesn't even know what the word target panic is, or that people have it. You know, like, she doesn't know. It's just, what is that? You know? And it's funny because I have a shirt. I made a shirt and sold it just on my website or whatever. But it says, is my target panic showing? And it has like a broken arrow on it. Because it's like, even the highest level archers, like, you know, for example, the highest level archer, Levi Morgan. Okay. I've hunted with Levi. I've hunted down in South Texas with him at that Cactus Jack Ranch. Like, incredible place. Wild. The deer management that they have down there is absolutely insane. But, you know, talking to him, he still deals with target panic on and off. Like, I mean, whatever it is throughout the season that trips it, but he knows how to harness it and he knows how to correct it and he knows when it's happening, you know, like, but even the highest level archers still deal with target panic. An advantage that an entry level archer has is they don't even know what target panic is. They have no reason to panic. They just got to pull a trigger. So there's something to that infancy that's like, people can shoot really accurate. And I know what you're talking about with, like, early on, it seems like deer just fell over dead. Where it's like, man, I never really botched any shots. I just shot and they got hit and it worked. You know, right. I get that because looking back on some of my first deer, yeah, it was kind of almost like an instinctive compound shot. It was just like, well, it's there and it would work. So yeah. There is something to that for sure.
Yeah, no, well, so my, the very first time I took a bow out, I don't know how old I was, probably 15, but easily I shot at like 5-6 doe, and all of them were like 10 yards away eating a corn pile under my neighbor's buddy stand. And I hit one in the leg and I thought it was going to die. And I found a little, you know, probably toenail size drop of blood, and obviously never found it. At the Hunter's Advantage, we live by the KISS slogan.
You were not supposed to tell them that.
No, I meant we like to keep it simple, stupid. All jokes aside, Exodus is the definition of keeping it simple. Let's say you aren't really sure what arrow setup you should run. The Exodus Arrow Builder will help you build the right arrows for your exact setup.
Or if you don't have time to change those trail cam batteries in the dog days of summer, Exodus has a great selection of cell cameras and regular trail cameras. And if you pair them with one of their solar panels, you'll be set for a long while. I've shot over a dozen deer and a big old black bear in Saskatchewan with these arrows, and I trust them to fly right and get the job done. And they have something for everyone with the Exodus NIS micro diameter arrows or the Exodus MMTs.
So if you want to save money on Exodus arrows, cell cameras, or anything else they got on their website, make sure to check out ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA10 for 10% off.
Once again, that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com, and make sure to use code HA10 for 10% off at checkout. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Like you're saying, with deer just falling over, it's like it is it's the not learning bad habits. Like you haven't learned any bad habits early on, so your shot process is just get the pin there and pull the trigger. And a lot of times, man, that works. Like there's high level archers who are punchers.
Gillingham, right?
Dude, one of the best archers in the world.
It's a unit.
Wow, crack that thing, buddy. And he's so good at it, you know? And I think it goes back to, like I say, the infancy of archery. If you don't know any different and you're just pulling a trigger when the pin gets there, it's probably going to hit, you know? Yeah, it's when you overthink things and your pin's there and then it drops out of the bottom, or it's off to you're trying to pull it in, you know. And it's so funny, man. That's why I love archery, because there's so many different levels. There's so many different things to learn. There's so much you can go into on the gear side and like nerd out. I nerd out hard on the gear side. It's just like, man, what can I do to change this? Like I was saying, I was messing with my stabilizer setup, my back bar setup, my front setup, and I got it on my RX-8. I got a stabilizer setup now that, dude, my pin float is like almost, I mean, it's there, but it is almost nothing. Like the pin float's just barely even moving. And it's just when you dial things into that point and you start putting groups down, you know, at fairly long distance that's like really respectable, you start getting like this feeling of accomplishment where you're just like, man, I am shooting really well, you know. And
then you go that feeling in my life, but
man, it's so much fun. Like I say, anybody who doesn't work on their own bows, you know, if you have the means to buy a bow press in an area in your house or garage or whatever to put a bow press, man, I would encourage everybody to start working on their own bows, because you become so much better as an archer when you learn what's going wrong. You know, if you don't know what's going wrong with your bow, you don't know that it's even got a problem. You know?
Yeah. I guess Jake, we were always our own bow techs because we never had an archery shop close enough to go get them worked on.
Well, I don't know if it was either that or the money thing. Because hell, I mean, I got my first, I guess, good bow in 2019 or something like that, and that thing never got set up for me at all. I still have it. It was an old Matthews Switchback, and then in 2020, I got a V3. And I finally got it set up for me. And I was like, oh, so this is what it's like to actually have a bow set up for you. Now, again, did it help my shooting? It probably made me worse, but that's me. That's someone who's a little bit mentally challenged. But anyways, but going back to that target panic thing, do you think it's because either, like, let's say the newbies that really don't know what target panic is, do you think it's something along the lines of like they haven't built up that much, I guess, I don't want to call it effort or whatever, but they haven't put, yeah, that's what it is. They haven't put enough effort into hunting to really like, okay, I did all this stuff and it's finally about to pay off. I don't want to screw it up. Or do you think it's, target panics maybe of like, okay, I've shot it into 3D or, a hay bale that's in my backyard. And now when I shoot it towards a deer, I may only shoot 3 or 4 deer a season. And so at that point, you're only putting that game time experience 3 or 4 times a year versus, the latter. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think one thing that can help with target panic and also induce target panic is going to your local 3D shoot, your local paper shoot, your local tournament where there is pressure put on you, because it gives you a certain level of like anxiety within the shot that can kind of mimic a shot on an animal. Still not to the full extent. I mean, the shot on the animal is still probably going to be your high, unless you're in a high level tournament, high stakes, a lot of money on the line. The shot on the animal is probably going to be your most stressful position you're going to be put in as an archer. But where target panic stems from is anticipation of the shot in relation to your pin float, in relation to, how fast you're acquiring the target. There's a lot of different, pockets of target panic where it all kind of comes together. Some people have target panic where they drop low out of the target, or they have target like right before they shoot, they dip low and they drop out of it. And other people have target panic that they can't get the pin to the target to save their life. Like they come up on the bottom of the target and that pin holds at the bottom of the target. Like it's like you've got a concrete block on your bow and you can't get it up. So there's a lot of different, or just like crazy punching of the trigger, letting off your back wall and letting that thing just slam. There's a lot of different forms of target panic, but it all comes down to the anticipation of the shot and your brain relaying to your hand or your finger or your arm when that release is going to go off. And that's why you see so many people who have dealt with target panic turn to a tension style release or a hinge release, because they can really start getting into a rhythm where the bow's going to go off and their brain isn't allowed to know when. So that relation, because your brain cannot possibly react fast enough to your finger hitting the trigger, your thumb hitting the trigger. When they see that pin float and it's on the target, it's there, it's got to go. And that causes that little bit of, and then your arrow's 1.5 feet to the right or 1.5 feet low, or you're locking low and then all of a sudden you pop up and shoot. And I think all of that stems back to anxiety in the shot and anticipation of the shot, anticipation of the bow going off, like that loud noise that your brain doesn't like. It's the anticipation of that. And there's a guy who I've never watched his course or gone through his course, although I would like to take it, because I know so many people who have, and they've said great things about it. But on the target panic side, there's a guy named Joel Turner. You ever heard of Joel Turner?
We've had him on the podcast. Yeah, he's a stud. Yeah.
Perfect. So, I mean, same thing. He would know the ins and outs of that situation, the target panic situation. And if guys are dealing with that, I think that's probably a great course for people to go through, because I'm sure he gives you exercises and things to go through with, whether it be blank bailing or just holding a bow at full draw and not shooting, letting your bow down and just allow your brain to have some clarity. Because if you start getting really deep into target panic and you allow it to keep happening, it just kind of gets worse,
Oh yeah. Well, when I first started shooting 3D, I'd go with my uncle. He'd go and shoot a few times, and I remember the anxiety the first time I drew back on a 3D target versus a bag, because you grow up buying those $20 bags or whatever from Walmart, and they're this big, and you're like, you're just putting your pin on it. You're like, oh, all the pins are on it. You just start firing arrows. But I drew back on my first 3D target, and I mean, it's on there, and I mean, within half a second, it's off, and then it's back on, and then it's off, and you're immediately like, oh, I am freaking out. Yeah. Right. In your head.
And that causes you to want to punch, like,
oh yeah,
really hard. Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets hard because you get into actually hunting deer or animals, and you get in this situation where as soon as your pin touches that animal, you're like, it's on. That's good enough. It's on. It's good enough. And in archery, it's as good as anybody. It's not good enough. You can hit one pretty good and still not be good enough.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Inches in archery is, I should say, well, in archery in general, if you're shooting for score on a 3D, if you're shooting on paper, inches, an inch is a mile in archery, especially when you're trying to shoot an animal. If you miss that heart by that much, back behind the heart, whatever, below the lung, front of the liver, there's kind of a no man's land there. There's kind of a no man's land above the lungs. And it's, the difference between killing an animal very quickly or an animal not dying. Yeah.
So you're pro void, like no man's land within, like a cavity in the whitetail. You think that exists?
100%. And I've got video proof of it.
You really?
Yeah. So my brother last year, my brother shot a doe, and on video, like, you watch the video and you would say that doe is dead in 60 yards. Like, great shot, Ethan. Awesome. We went and looked for her, couldn't find her. No blood. Like, what the heck? We start watching the video back. We slow it down, slow motion, frame by frame. We're watching it. We watch the arrow go in, and instantly in my head, I'm like, once it's on slow-mo, it's different than watching, because he had a nocturnal on it. So, like, sometimes on video, the nocturnal obviously helps, like, where the arrow went in. But if you're filming on, like, a lower frame rate, like a 24 frame per second or anything like that, it's kind of like a laser beam.
Yeah, and that create like a blur almost.
Right. So the actual entry is kind of hard to see with a low frame rate. And I think, if I remember right, I think he was filming in a lower frame rate, maybe even 30. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it was enough there. It was like a beam, and then looking back on it. And I watched the video back slow-mo, and you can see that arrow go in, and it's like, okay, that if there's anywhere to be in no man's land, that arrow is in no man's land. Okay. Obviously, like I say, we looked for that deer. We never found that deer. I think it was 6-7 days later, same exact tree stand, same exact position the deer came in on, same exact deer with a wound above her, right in the no man's land. There's a 2-inch rage hypodermic hole right above her lungs. And this time he double lunged it and smoked it. Sure enough, found it. It was the same deer, same hole. The wound was already starting to heal. And he blew through that deer, clean pass through from a tree stand.
That's wild.
There is a void for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't like high enough to be spine. You know what I mean? Like, it was low enough to be that, like,
didn't backstrap it.
Yeah, exactly. It did not backstrap it. And it had even on the video, because he filmed it the second time too, the video of it walking in, you can see the cut on that deer. You can see the 2-inch hole from the rage that he shot at the week prior. And he's like, oh, that's the same deer.
Yeah.
This time he smoked it, but it was just like, and again, that goes to My brother Ethan is an exceptional archer, and he just hit this much too high. You know, I think it was on 22, 23-yard shot, just this much too high. Just hunting scenarios are different, man. Anybody can mess up at any time. And but yeah, so that was kind of like, I'd always heard of the void, never really saw it, experienced it too much myself. And then that deer that my brother hit this last year, I was like, yeah, that's proof. There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as long as you have like video evidence of it, I mean, I'm not for or against it. I mean, I think I had a run-in with it before as well, but in the long term, I think we could have found that deer, but we were still young and we were hunting a public piece that had like head high grass. That's where the deer ran into. We didn't know about dogs or drones or anything like that. So long story short, we never found it. But I always think that like after talking with people like the Ranch Fairy or, there was a guy at ATA this year who,
Oh, it's Brian Johnson. He's the anatomy guy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He knows all about that. And like, he has his diagrams and like what the Ranch Fairy says, it's like one cavity. The lungs don't expand or like within the cavity, the whole cavity expands and like compresses and decompresses. Right. And so like you dive into those rabbit holes and you're like, okay, it doesn't exist. So if, maybe if I shoot, I don't have it on camera, I can't do it frame by frame, then maybe the deer just ducked or it turned and, I backstrapped and didn't know it. But having someone who actually like has kind of went frame by frame and looking, it's like the whitetail's a mysterious creature. I mean, there really might be something to that.
And I think, not necessarily that, there's just like when I'm referring to the void, I'm not referring to just like a blank space. I'm referring to in an area that with the right perfect circumstance, if an arrow strikes that area and all the stars align, then you're not hitting a vital. And typically it's like right above the lung, and in my experience, slightly forward to the shoulder. If that makes sense.
Yep. No, so, I understand. So still hitting some goodies. They're just non-lethal goodies.
Right.
Understood.
And something that you might still, half the deer might die on that shot because you clipped a lung on the back end. It's just such a, like you say, every deer, every scenario, every situation is so. I've had shots where it's like you would bet your life savings on it being clean double lung, and then it's like, man, why am I still tracking this thing? We're 200 yards into this track and he's still going. I did that with a deer in Kansas that I still to this day like have no idea why I was not able to recover that deer. I shot him from the ground, double lung, broadside. He didn't move. He didn't drop, nothing. I watched that arrow disappear. I got it on video. I slowed it down frame by frame, watch it disappear. I'm like, that's clean double lung. That thing's dead. I start walking the blood trail, and there is like bright, frothy, bubbly lung blood like this, and it's everywhere. I'm like, this deer's done. I was like, heck yeah, this is perfect. Goes down the creek, up the bank of the creek, across the S curve of the creek, goes down the other side of the creek, up it, jumps a fence, across a big open pasture field, up into a cedar thicket, walks through every dang cedar. He was weaving through all those cedars. By the time I got to the cedar thicket, I was 300 some yards into the track and on my hands and knees. I shot him in the morning. I lost blood at it was starting to get dark. I lost blood at 550 yards after he jumped, I think, 4 fences, crossed 2 creeks. And I'm like, this is lung blood. Like I was on. Now the lung blood after the first fence went to like drop to drop, but right away it was just boom, just pumping lung blood. And then it went drop to drop, and I was hands and knees all day. I searched all day for that deer. I turned on my tracker on Onyx. I put on 10 miles on Onyx, and where the last blood was, it was in an open field. And I mean, like, think like Western Kansas, okay? Wide open field. If that deer was dead in that field, I should have been able to see him, glass him, follow some type of cattle trail, anything, and be able to find. I did a zigzag and just searched for. I had put 10 miles on Onyx looking for that deer. The next day, I called in a dog. The dog came in looking for the deer. We never found that deer, and we put in all the effort to find the deer. The video shows a clean double lung. The start of the blood trail shows an awesome double lung shot. Still have no idea why that deer didn't die. It's dude, they're a mystery sometimes. It just blows my mind. But
Yeah,
that was, and I'll say, of all the deer that I've killed, of all the hunting that I've done, that is the first deer that really threw me through like I truly don't know what happened.
were there any tire marks by the blood? Because your neighbors might have just loaded it up, and
Yeah,
that was just the blood drops from the bed.
Where it started, I had even thought about that, because where it had started to hook up, the blood did, when he jumped the fence, the blood did start to hook up towards a gravel road, and it was public on both sides. So I was able to search the public on the other side. I was able to search the public on the side that I shot him on. But that did cross my mind. I'm like, did he die like right by the road and somebody pick him up? And I just didn't know in the middle of the night. It was such a weird experience. And I hope to never have that experience again, because it was like, I thought this, and if he did survive, I thought maybe one lung somehow. I don't know how, but maybe one lung,
Yeah, but at a certain point, if there's that much blood, you're like, how much more does he have left? I mean, because if you were tracking him for that long, I mean, I'd be flabbergasted as well.
Yeah. And it was like when he was crossing the creek, it was like you can see the blood from 20 feet away. Just
yeah.
It
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I'm convinced those are the ones that, like, you find a nice deadhead on your property and you're like, it probably came from 3 properties over, in the spring. You're like, oh, this is a cool one. What happened with that? And somebody's at home still like crying in bed with his wife, like, how?
Where did it go?
Yeah, that's exactly
signing his 3rd divorce paper.
Yeah, exactly. Man, those scenarios are out there, and I feel for guys that go through that, because, like I say, that's the only deer that I've shot where I felt like I just absolutely pinwheeled it and couldn't find it, and it was just it screwed with my mind so bad, man. I was just like, well, what am I doing? I'm making perfect shots on these animals and find them, So yeah, it was weird.
That reminded me, Jacob, that we found one this year that I shot 3 years ago on public, and 76-yard shot, probably the dumbest shot of my life. But
don't recommend it.
Hit this deer spraying like a water hose, and we're like, man, he's got to be dead in here somewhere. We track this hill, get back into the grass, take one step into the grass, whoop, up he jumps and runs, and we lost him and found him. That deer haunted me for 3 years. I was like, where is he? And Jake went and hunted this area this year, and I was like, be looking for that deadhead when you go in there. He walks like 50 yards from where we lost blood and found it. I was like, really? Oh my gosh. Yes, I got it right here. Check this out.
He didn't move very far then, huh? He was hurting.
He was dead the whole time.
That's a great deer.
Yeah. And I wondered, like, how many deer are out there like that 40 yards from where you lost him, and you're like, he's in here somewhere, and you just never find him.
Yep. It's so funny how deer work. So there's another scenario where, so my buddy Steven and I in Missouri, we both doubled up on 2 hammers. Like, his deer was in the 180s. I can't remember what it came out to, mid 180s. My deer came out to like mid 140s. I think 147 as an 8-point. Just an we shot both of those deer out of the same field on the same evening sit. We both brought our bows into the blind. Craziest hunt ever. His deer, he ended up shooting pretty far back. He hit it like, it was like, okay, that's gut shot. We got to wait overnight. My deer, I made a great shot on it. It was nice and cool that evening. We came back the next morning, because both deer jumped the fence on the exact same trail. And we were so worried about pushing in to find my deer that we were going to bump his deer, because they both jumped the fence at the exact same spot, 2 hours apart, but they both jumped the fence the same spot. And we knew his had a gut shot. We knew mine was a good shot. We knew it was going to be plenty cool. It got pretty cool that evening. And it was like, my deer's going to be fine in the morning. If we bump your deer, it's game over on your deer, because it's just like thicker than you can even imagine in that spot. Anyway, next morning, come in, find my deer, all's good, perfect. Let's go look for your deer. We looked everywhere for Steven's deer. Lost blood pretty much right after the fence on the gut shot. I think it must have plugged up or something, like something came down and plugged it up. Lost blood. We searched everywhere. The way that he jumped and went into this bedding area, it was like, man, he's got to be in this block right here. So we all spread out. Man, we had like 7 or 8 guys looking for this deer. All of us grid searching, all of us looking everywhere. And it came down to literally, we searched all day to that evening, never found him. And it was like, how, that's what I was telling my buddy Steven. I was like, this deer is dead. There is no way. The shot you put on him with, I think he was shooting like a Rage Extreme or whatever. It's like a big cut broadhead. I'm like, this deer's dead. And we're kind of, at that point, he was kind of hanging his head and like, man, how are we going to find this thing? He was going to go back out for however many days. And just like you said, obviously at that point, the deer would have expired and it would just be like, we just got to find it. But I was talking to him. I'm like, the one place we haven't looked is where he came from initially when we saw him the first time in the field, where he entered the field. We never looked in that spot because he ran way the opposite way, when he got shot. I'm like, I wonder if that deer button hooked and went back to his original bedding area where he came out of prior to seeing him come into the field. And it was like a good distance. He would have had to make a pretty big button hook to do that. So we went back and we got to the fence where he jumped, and we just basically took a right turn and went all the way down, button hooked all the way back into the bedding area that he would have come from coming into the field the evening he shot him. I'm walking the creek. He's walking just the top of the creek, like where deer, bed on the top of the S curve of the creek and they overlook and have that wind blowing on him. He was laying dead right there. He walked right over on top of him. He button hooked all the way back to his original bedding area, which was like nowhere even close to where we thought that deer was. Nowhere even close. And ended up finding him. And it was like, oh, he didn't die that long ago. Like he was still like kind of gut shot. They take a while, but it was just like, right. I learned something about deer that day where it's like, if they're hurting, I've always known that they want to go to security when they're hurting, but I was just like, there's plenty of security where he ran to, but it was like he's just more comfortable with button hooking back into his original bed. It was just like I say, everything you do in hunting, there's always something you're learning and always something that's just like, ding, all right, light bulb. Now I can try that on the next one. And so it turned out great. We got both of our deer and it was, happy days, but it was a little sad there for a little bit. We're like, he might've lost this deer and it was a freaking giant. So it was like, oh man, not that it makes it any worse for any other deer, but it was just like, this was one he was really after and it was a hammer. And yeah, so glad we found it.
Yeah. You touched on it a little bit. You said you started bow hunting at 12, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When did you start filming?
I started filming probably when I was probably like 17. I probably had the first camera. And that was like not filming for anything other than I just filmed it I liked looking back at the deer footage and seeing what deer, I could get on camera while I was hunting. My first, probably 17, 18. My first camera arm, I built out of like all steel 1-inch tubing.
Oh, nice.
So I cut 1-inch. I used to work construction for 13 years prior to doing this. So I had access to like, the welder, I had access to drill presses, everything. So I built this camera arm out of 1-inch by 1-inch steel tubing, drilled holes, and I put bolts through with like little poly washers between the bolt head and so it was quiet,
Yeah, right.
And so anyway, and dude, it looked like it looked like a murder weapon because it was just the plate on the back that would go against the tree. I welded 2 leg bolts, like top and bottom on it, and it just like.
How much did that sucker weigh?
25 pounds. I don't know. It was ridiculous.
The Franken arm.
You know what was funny?
Sturdy is what it was.
It like could have supported like a professional camera system, and I was running like a little Vixia Canon, 600 F
One of those
series
little camcorders.
like super lightweight, but this camera arm's just like crazy. It was so funny, man. The things I did back then just to tinker. I mean, that kind of shows you the side of me, the tinker inside of me. It's like, why would I build a camera arm like that? Just thinking about it, but I'm like, oh, it seemed like the right thing to do, you know?
Well, I got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So back then I started filming kind of just for myself. And then when I started really getting into more of the cameras and, wanting to start sharing more of the content was kind of when Instagram came around. Instagram was probably like the first platform that I realized I can reach people with. And I'm so passionate about hunting and the outdoors and archery and stuff. And it like literally has, shaped my life. Like, I don't know where I would be in life without archery and hunting. So like, I wanted to share that passion with others and just be like, here is why I'm so passionate about it. Here's what I get to experience. Like because I would come back at the time, my brother Ethan didn't bow hunt. Even back in 2016, when I started Whitetail Fit in 2016, my brother Ethan didn't even shoot a bow. He didn't bow hunt. My brother Caleb, I'd taken him a couple times, but he wasn't really into it too heavy. I had a few, close friends who bow hunted, but not like a ton. I didn't have like a huge posse of people that around me who bow hunted. And anyway, the more I was able to share video, the more I was able to share the hunts, the more my friends started being like, man, that'd be kind of fun. Like, that'd be fun to go do, and then my brother Ethan gets into it, and now it's like a massive part of his life, and has steered him in a great direction. So anyway, I'm so passionate about it that I'm so glad that I did pick up a camera and start filming it, because it is, I mean, it's completely changed my life for the better. So
yeah, filming's all fun and games until, that big one walks in and you're like, I want to set you to the side, little buddy. I got to focus right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Have you ever,
I've experienced that. So before like the first stages of Whitetail Fit, 2016, 17, 18, that I was in a mentality of like, if I can't get the kill on film, I'm going to pass it. I'm going to try to get the kill on film so I can, have this good piece of content. And that went out the window really, really fast when I like consciously passed what would have at the time would have been my biggest deer ever. And it was like the second I passed that deer, I vowed to myself in the tree stand, I'm like, you can still tell a story, Joel. You don't have to have the arrow impacting the animal to tell a good story and have people enjoy and get the fun out of this piece of content. Right then and there, I told myself, I'm like, will I strive to get a kill on film? Absolutely. I'll try to do everything I can. Am I going to pass a 150-inch deer that was my target deer, that would have been my biggest deer to date? No, not going to happen anymore. It happened to me once. And then I was like, now it's happened again on accident where the camera has cost me a deer where like I'm trying to get it in position. It sees me, it blows, or, it's right in the wrong position. I try to move it a little bit and I miss my shot opportunity. This other one, I like consciously was like, I can't get it on camera, so I'm going to pass them. And that was like, I'm never going to make that decision again. Never again.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The camera has definitely made a lot of deer be able to walk in the woods when they should have definitely been in the bed of the truck. Yeah. Cause one in particular. So I had the biggest buck of my life in 2020, and you can ask Christian before and even after, like today, if I see a good buck, I'm like, okay, camera should be first, but I got to eat, sometime.
Yep.
Well, the biggest buck of my life came from directly behind me, a complete 180. But before that, there's like a little spike and like 2 doe over here just milling around. And the spike is like November, probably mid-November, something like that. So the spike was trying to get in on the action a little bit. So he was sitting there like grunting it up, as deep as he could, and then kind of chasing around the doe. And then they ran off behind me. But while he was doing that, I was bored out of my mind where we were hunting, didn't have any cell phone service or anything like that. So I took out the old grunt tube and I let him have it for, I don't know, probably 2 minutes until they ran off. And all of a sudden I hear some leaves crunching behind me, and I turn out and look, and I'm like, all right, that wasn't the spike that I thought. And I didn't have anything, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn the camera on because this deer has already looked up at me in my tree. And I was like, no one's going to believe this crap. Yeah. And I flick it on, and long story short, it worked out. But if I didn't think I was going to be able to shoot that deer, then that camera would never have been touched.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And like I say, I've found myself in that position, and with me anymore, like I say, the early stages, like I was just learning the ins and outs of like videoing hunts. I'd done it before, but not to the scale that I started to want to do it. So like for me in the beginning, I was just like, man, the cameras first. Now it's like the camera is part of the hunt. The camera is part of the story and what's going on. But when it comes down to like the actual harvesting of the animal, again, I'm going to try everything in my power to get that shot on film. But if not, I don't lose sleep over it. And before I would lose sleep over it and be like, gosh, should I even put this out kind of thing? And I'm like, man, that is the wrong mentality. If you have a story on a hunt, whether it's an elk hunt, mule deer hunt, antelope, I don't care, whitetail, whatever it is, if you have a story on a hunt that can inspire somebody else to get out in the woods and try it for themselves, that story needs to be told whether you got impact of an arrow or not. That's my mentality. And I'm glad I went that route because it has opened me up to a lot less stress sometimes and pressure that I've put on myself in the past. And it makes the whole experience so much more fun when like I don't know. It's just so much more fun when you're like, I'm okay with shooting a deer off camera. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you guys need to get. You just need to get you a GoPro 360. I'm telling you, this year I had this decoy buck like coming out, ears pinned back. I draw on him before he even gets out of the timber, and I watch him walk out of the camera frame. I look down for a second, see it, he walks out, and I look up, my GoPro's blinking. I was like, we're good.
Yep.
So I just shot him over the shoulder. Dude, those 360s are awesome because you know if that thing's on, it's getting it.
Yeah. So that is before September. I have usually every year I have like, I don't know if you guys do this, but I'm a gear nerd, whatever. But every year I have like a list of camera equipment that I want to try for the next year. So before September, like last September, one of the pieces that I added to my arsenal was, so on the back of this phone, it's a, are you familiar with Capture Clip, like or like Peak Design Capture Clip? So the Peak Design Capture Clip is it's just like a
mounting plate,
a mount, and then on your backpack there's a plate that you can mount your camera, and it just sits on your backpack. Cool. So I've ran that for years and years and years. Peak Design came out with an all captured clip system for cell phones like last year. And that's what this little ring is here. So they have a system where, they have GoPro mounts, they have handlebar mounts, whatever, that it's magnetic and it clips into this little metal piece and it's really stable. Well, I got to looking into that and I was like, you know what? I'll bet I can make that work for like a self-filming spot and stock situation. And I got a head mount for a GoPro, and I got the Peak Design case and a Peak Design GoPro mount for this that comes off at like comes down here. And I screwed it in, and literally my cell phone would sit Like if I was wearing my hat backward, I'd have that mount and my cell phone would sit right here and I'd angle it right down my shoulder for the shot.
Oh,
And it worked awesome. Like it worked so well. I shot my mule deer with it in western Nebraska. I shot my elk was with that was 2 years ago. That was with the GoPro. But like the angle that you get with and cell phones record,
better than my first camera. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm always messing with stuff like that. But for this year, the 360 is like, that's in the cart, going to get purchased. 360. And then I need to upgrade my old GoPro. Cause have you guys ever dealt with GoPros like failing all the time?
What do you mean by failing? Just not turning on or not doing the remote thing?
Not turning on, overheating. I've even had it say that it is too hot when it was like 20 degrees out and it just shut the camera off and wouldn't record. I've had it stop recording this is across like 3 different GoPro platforms that I've ran over the years, but I had it stop recording on a Kansas deer like mid full draw and it just stopped. And
I have had that happen.
I ended up missing the deer, so like thankfully it didn't work, but
worked out.
Yeah, but it was I've had some tough luck with GoPros, but I also am like not very kind to my equipment at all. Like it gets tossed in my backpack with the rest of the stuff, and I probably should be better about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're always interested in that aspect of it too, like the storytelling aspect, because the reality is how much money can you dish over to have people film for you all the time, right? I'd spend every single penny we'd make if I could on that sort of stuff. But I think it's a true art to self-filming, like being able to self-film and tell a story. And if you have a mixture of GoPros, like you said, your phone and your big camera, it's like, heck, throw a drone in there. That art of storytelling takes a while, but it is very achievable with self-filming if you're intentional with kind of how you set all your stuff up.
Very much so. And a good example of that, if you go back and this was a film that I was like really proud of for the self-filming aspect, was my mule deer hunt of this last year. I killed a really, really nice mule deer in western Nebraska. And I worked on that deer for like, I think it was 8 days. I killed him on day 8, I think, whatever it was. But anyway, that whole film start to finish is all self-filmed. And I was just really proud of like the end production. I was like, oh my gosh, like I got the kill on film. I got all the footage. And here's a nice thing about self-filming a Western Plains mule deer hunt. You can get a lot of footage of deer because they're in the wide open. You can find them, you can see them, you can film them, right? So at distance, I had so much cool footage at distance of deer that's just like, that's fun. Like in the whitetail woods, you don't really get that. They're either right on top of you or they're not, unless you're summer scouting on a bean field or something. But it's just so fun. The mule deer hunt, it was just like, I got a lot of footage of animals.
That's funny you say that. I was working on we had a rutcation last year, and Jake and my brother both killed public bucks. And I'm not kidding you. Out of the 30 minutes of footage, it's like he sees a buck, shoots a buck. Camp stuff, nothing. He sees a buck, he shoots a buck. I'm like, that's the 2 deer we got on film, and they both got shot. But there's like 20 seconds of hunting footage on both sides of it.
Yep. And hey, I mean, like I say, the storytelling side of stuff. Here's an example. I shot a deer in Missouri, 2019 or 2020. I can't remember what it was. It was a big 10 point. It's this deer. It's the logo deer. So I shot this deer in Missouri. I shot him at 2 yards below my stand. Like I had to put it basically on the inside of his shoulder blade, and it came out straight down through his heart. Like it was that close. It was just straight down shot. Did not get the shot on film. Like didn't get the arrow going into the deer on film. But I was able to whip the camera around, and I got him tipping over. He fell down the hill behind me. Like it was perfect heart shot. He ran up 10 yards and fell down the hill behind me. I got that on film, but the initial shot itself was not on film. The whole video is like 40 minutes long, tons of storytelling, tons of talking about why I'm setting up in this rut corridor, why I think it's a rut corridor, the, you know, days prior of hunting this and out, whatever. I think that video's got, it's over a couple 100,000 views. Not one comment from anybody saying, I wish you would have got the shot on film. Not a
Well,
single.
because you deleted all the negative comments, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I think we think about that too much. Sometimes it's like, yes, it is cool. Yes, it's awesome footage. Yes, it like, do I want to try to strive to get the shot on film? Absolutely. Will I try everything to do it? Absolutely. If I don't get the shot on film, like there's still a great story to be told. If not, maybe even a better story because you have some story as to why you didn't get the shot on film. Like, and it's, I think it shows like the human side of, you know, people sitting at home watching a video. It shows that like everybody has something that they're dealing with on a hunt, you know, and I think that needs to be told so much more than it is sometimes. And we're getting a lot better about it. But like the old TV stuff, like it was hard to relate with some of the old TV stuff because it's like we're at an outfitter, we got $40,000 cameras, we got, you know, everything is structured and almost timelined. You know, you can kind of expect one thing from one hunt to go to the next hunt, to the next hunt, to the next hunt. Like sometimes even the same stuff that they're saying in the lines, and that was hard to relate with. Well, anymore people are creating content that's like you're there with them, and that's what I want to strive to do. Is like I want somebody to watch my videos and feel like they're sitting in a stand with me. That's like my ultimate goal, you know.
Yeah, that's the key word is relatability. And I think the good people that you want watching your stuff, I think they will enjoy that and take in consideration like your intentions there. But on the other side, you got those piece of crap humans that will sit in their mom's basement eating, you know, typing with their Cheeto fingers about how you made me watch a 40-minute video and you didn't get the kill on film. And it's like, yeah, but you know, I put this together. It's only a 15-minute video or whatever it is, and it took me 20 hours to edit. Yeah. So do you not see that side of it? Like, come on, help me out here a little bit.
Yeah, my it's so fun anymore because like I say, the first several years of Whitetail Fit, I was like, dude, if I got a negative comment, like it affected me. And I was like, why would he say that? Dude, same thing. I was like, I'm putting so much time into this video. Why would somebody say that? And it was just like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Like I'm going out on, I'm trying my best here to produce content that I really, really enjoy, that like I show my grandpa and he's like, that's so cool. Like, and then I've got some guy online who's, you know, talking about whatever, name it, you know, anymore. Dude, that stuff like does not affect me at all in any way, shape, or form anymore. And it's like the best because when I do get those comments, they're just hilarious to think about. Like you say, like the Cheeto fingers in the basement, whatever. It's just hilarious to think about. Somebody would comment on your video and say, you just made me watch 40 minutes of whatever. It's like, I didn't make you do anything. You voluntarily clicked on the video.
That's very true.
Sat through 40 minutes just to find something that you might not have liked. It's like, and by the way, you're going to click on the next video and watch the whole thing because you hate me that much. Like it's, to me, it's like such a funny, like, I don't get that much hate anymore. When I first started, I got a little bit, but I think the industry was just in a little bit different spot. People just didn't understand the social media side nearly as much as they do now. But like back in 2016, there were definitely haters because it was like, what is this? Nobody cares that you have a camera, bro. Like nobody cares to see you, you know, whatever. Now the way the industry is gone and so much more emphasis has been put on social media and YouTube. Now people understand it. And if they want a hunting show, they can't, that's what they get, you know? So it's like, it's hard to badmouth anymore somebody who's actually putting effort in, and it's hard to badmouth anybody who wants to try it. I support anybody who wants to try to do something that they love. I fully support it. And if you're bashing on it, like, you need to take a look in the mirror. That's not their problem.
Well, most of them that are the people who's commenting negatively need to take a look in the mirror. You're right, physically, because you click on their profile and they got like 3 chins, and you're like, okay, dude,
Yeah.
you got me.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
I got the most kind comment the other day from a guy. I screenshotted it. They don't always hurt, but sometimes they hurt, especially ones like these.
You
ones.
have those mornings, you know what I mean? Like normally they don't bother you, and then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and like you're just kind of, checking the YouTube studio and you see a comment, you're like, you know what? F that guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna write something back.
Yep.
That's usually a mistake, but
This guy said, "Shut the F up, you overthinking punani mother effer." I just replied, "I hope your day gets better."
See, that's what I'm saying. That's how you need to handle the situation. It's just like, bro, your day sucks.
Yeah, dude. His wife was mad.
Oh yeah.
didn't you find like an outfitter for like a fishing guide or something like that?
I had a really good one time. This guy was a captain on the coast of Texas, and he comments on like 5 videos in a row just hating. And so I just clicked on his profile picture and I messaged him on my personal Instagram. I said, "Do you have a problem?" And he reads it, goes back, deletes his comment. Next video, he's like, "This was a really good video. I liked the effort you put into it." I was like, I got him.
Yeah. And
Confrontation.
that's so funny because I've had experiences like that as well, where it's just like, I'll go direct to the source and message him and be like, all good. Like, is there something I can help you with? Like whatever. And I've had like one person fight back on it. Usually they're like, "Oh man, I just thought, whatever. I actually really like your content. I just, whatever." It's like, all right, it kind of burns it out. And then, but dude, that's so much work to put into somebody who's just going to be negative,
Right.
And it's just, you chalk it up as a loss and you laugh at it and move on.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. That's where I got to. I think that was the point where it was like a turning point for me, was like realizing how much support that I have and how much positivity I have around me. 99.9% of the comments, positive, awesome people, great conversations. And then there's like this 0.1 that comes in and it's like, "F you, dude, you suck, whatever. Nobody cares about Whitetail Fit." What? Okay, I don't care. I never asked anybody to care about it. But I have all these positive people who are watching this stuff and telling me that they are gaining value from it. "Hey man, I lost 30 pounds watching, your Instagram stories. Hey, I did this. I went out, I took my daughter on her first hunt. Like, so cool to see you implementing, I'm a follower of Christ. It's like, so cool to see you implementing the Lord and things and stuff." It's like, man, that's the stuff I need to be focusing on. So when I have one comment come in and I put any effort towards it, man, that's taken away from like all the positive stuff I should be putting my effort towards, and thanking people for like supporting me, because like without them, I don't have my channel. I don't have anything that I'm doing in my lifestyle right now without the positivity. So yeah, I just, at any time I get hate stuff anymore, it's just funny. It's just fun.
Satan's working overtime out there, and he's got some vessels. He's got some vessels that are doing pretty good work on Facebook, especially.
Oh yeah.
But I'm curious. I mean, how long have you been doing, more of the, I know Whitetail fits your name, but more of the Western style kind of spot and stalk and stuff? Like, how'd you get into that?
So the first time I actually did a true like Western hunt, and this is subject to Western, but it was in Nebraska still. It was just Western Nebraska antelope. So that was that 2015? I think I went on that first one. And that was just like, obviously not like very physically taxing, but it was just like a different animal, way longer shot distance, just the way they acted was different. Terrain was obviously way different. And that was kind of like dipping my toes into it. My first like big Western backpacking trip was actually, I went to Total Archery Challenge, Utah in 2016 or 17. It was one of those years, 2016 or 17. And I had been talking already a little bit on Instagram to, do you guys know the Hush guys, like Eric Chesser?
I love their stuff.
Yeah. So I was talking with Eric a little bit on Instagram, and it was like, you know, I'm just a fan of Eric, and it's like, man, it'd be nice to meet you at the show, whatever, or at the Total Archery Challenge. Get to Total Archery Challenge, and I'd already been talking to Mountain Ops a little bit. Like when Mountain Ops first started, that was like very soon after I had started. So like when I first knew the owners of Mountain Ops, so Jordan and Casey Harbison were the owners of Mountain Ops. When they first started, I think they were almost a year in when I started my brand. So it was so cool. I got to watch those guys build that company to just be like ridiculous. Like the business mindset that those guys have is crazy. But anyway, super nice guys, super positive. Go to the shoot. And Jordan Harbison was like, hey, we've got an early morning tram time to go shoot. Like hop in with us and shoot with the Mountain Ops crew or whatever. Oh, sweet. Go up there. And Eric Chesser was in that group that we shot with. So got to talking with Eric, and it was like, man, this is so cool. Like this country out here, we're shooting on the Wasatch Front. I'm like, man, it'd be so fun to mule deer hunt out here. And Eric's like, dude, you should go mule deer hunt out here. I'm like, I've never done it. You know, like I'd probably take me a couple years of research to try to figure out how I want to do it, whatever. And he's like, come with me. I'm like, what? All right. What? Are you sure? You know, he's like, yeah, man, I hunt the front, you know, I've got my spots, whatever. Just get a tag for this next year and just fly out, drive out, whatever. Just come up to deer camp and hunt with me. I'm like, all right. You know, I was kind of like, heck yeah. We'd been talking, you know, but I didn't think he was going to invite me on a hunt, you know? So anyway, the next year comes around, sure enough, get my tags, go up and do a hunt with Eric Chesser on the Wasatch. And that was like my first dipping my toes into like an extended backpack hunt. And then from then on, it was, dude, I was just all in, completely hooked on it. Just like the challenge of chasing a big game animal, like off a backpack, is like the coolest thing ever. It's just multiple days camping, setting up spike camps, like that type of stuff is so much fun. And it's totally different than whitetail hunting. And there's a physical aspect to it that is like, you know, just for me, it adds to the fun because I like fitness. I like working out. It gives me a reason to like really dial in all of my workouts, my nutrition and stuff like that. And so I love it. But yeah, my first like true Western hunt, true like backpack hunt was the Wasatch Front for mule deer with Eric.
Did you get a shot at a muley?
Yes, and I missed it. Yeah, it was a tiny little deer, little basket rack sucker. But I was like, I'm not shooting a deer in Utah with this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I was just super, dude. I think looking back on it now, like at the time you're like, oh dude, what happened? Like, dude, I made a perfect shot, whatever. Looking back on it now, I think I was just so, because we had just hiked this freaking like monster of a slope, and this deer ran out and he was like 63 yards, and I think I was just, my heart was racing. It was my first shot on a mule deer, Western hunt, whatever. I'm quite sure I pulled my shot, and it was just like whatever. But yeah, after that you get your one shot, and then that's about it. And then it's, man, it was fun. That was such a fun hunt. But yeah, that just started like the snowball effect of Western hunts for me. Now every year I'm like, all right, we got to do mule deer, we got to do elk, we got to do antelope, let's get another tag here, you know. So now it's bad. Now it's starting to cut into whitetail hunting, which I usually like don't like doing. But like September in Nebraska, September 1st is the deer opener. And now all I want to do is spend September 1st through the 13th, 14th hunting mule deer in Western Nebraska. So I'm like, well, man, I'm still in Nebraska. It's like, I mean, there are whitetail out here, but I'm like focused on mule deer, you know. And, but yeah, this year with the bucks that I have on camera right now, I might push my mule deer hunt off maybe October or something like that, because, well, I have one more scouting trip. If I go out and I scout and I turn up the same group of bucks that I was hunting last year, I'll go out for mule deer because they were all studs. But this year I finally have a couple of good whitetail on camera that I'm like excited about.
Yeah.
So, and around here, honestly, my best chance at killing a big deer on the properties that I've got is like the first 2 weeks of September. Honestly, all the way through September, but the first 2 weeks of September is kind of my best chance to kill a big deer because the properties just see so much pressure once October comes. There's so many more people on the property that it pushes all the mature deer out. Your 2-year-olds will hang around. You still have does on the property. And then during the rut, they might come through, but it's like, I got a Kansas tag and I'm not hanging out in Nebraska during the rut. Like, I'm going to Kansas, So, but yeah, so this year, if I want to get one of these 2 deer killed, it's probably going to be first week of September that I'm going to do it.
Well, no disrespect to Nebraska, but Jake and I bought our Nebraska tags this year, and if 2 Forkies come out that are muleys, they're probably going to get destroyed.
I love it. I love it. And I am all for that too. Like, shoot what you want to shoot. I am not the guy that's going to sit on a pedestal and be like, hey, you need to shoot. You should really be shooting an older class deer. No, shoot what you want to shoot and have fun.
I kind of learned my lesson in Kansas. We drew out for Kansas in 2022. And of course, first time going to Kansas, you're like, I want to sit over, a bean field because they're public somehow, some way. They're able to afford bean fields on a lot of their public. And it's like, this is going to be great. You picture a Kansas buck, a lot of mass, white horns, and you're like, that's what I'm holding out for. Well, then, the biggest buck that we see that we're able to have a shot at, me and Christian both, was like mid 120s or something like that, which is a great buck. And the first night I sat on this bean field, like, it was kind of like hidden on the other side of this lake, and it had private all around it. And the only way you could get to this little bean field was if you walked all the way around the lake or kayak to it.
Yeah.
Well, I set up on it the first evening, and I seen that buck about 125, and I did everything in my power to try to get a shot at that deer, but it was just walking too fast. I didn't want to stop it because there's a lot of other deer around. So long story short, didn't see it. Well, the wind switched that evening and it blew out into the field. They all bust out. And I'm like, okay, I want to give this, because we were there for like 4 or 5 days. I want to give this spot a sit, hunt a different spot. And then the second time I went back by, I was like, I'm probably going to shoot this deer if it comes out again. But we had another buddy that was hunting some reservation or whatever. And he had a video of him passing like 145, 150 inch buck, like easily. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to waste my tag on it. And I'm over here thinking I'm thinking about shooting like realistically a low 120s buck here. And he passed the 150. So I'm not going to shoot this one. Well, that night he comes out and it's like God was just like, all right, you wanted this the first night, here you go. And he was just all sprawled out, like stretched open, just milling around, probably 35, 40 yards away. And I was like, not going to do it. Well, long story short, I ate tag soup that season. And from there on, I was like, if I go to a new state, do what?
And you would have been happy shooting it had you not.
I would have been, yeah. I would have at least had like a 7/8 chub that night, back at camp. But yeah. So that was kind of my eye-opening experience. It's like, okay, if that's my first time in a state, and especially like a buck, my first buck in that state, I'm not going to second guess it again.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny how you'll play mind tricks with yourself sometimes on hunts. And I've been guilty of the fact, not even guilty, but like, I've just been like, I'm not going to shoot this. And then the second it comes in, I'm like, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Getting shot, buddy. Like, it's going down. It's just one of those things where it's like you have something set in your mind, but then it's like expectation for the area is huge. Because if you don't have, like, some of the property that I hunt in Nebraska, that's why I'm like stoked to come hunt a 150 here in Nebraska, because that is a huge deer where I'm at. Like, we don't very seldom do we get any deer over 150. Like, it just is what it is. A lot of hunting pressure. They don't live very long. The whole thing is they don't get to age class. Like, to get that bigger deer, you have to get them into that 4 and 5 year old category, and they just don't make it here because rifle season's in the dead of the rut. There's a ton of deer that get killed, younger. And anyhow, all that to be said, you need to be hunting what is realistic for the area that you're in and realistic to the standards that you want to set for yourself. Because if you don't do that, you can literally go to an area and there is not a deer there that you are willing to shoot, because there's not a deer there that's over 125. You might have a 4 or 5 year old deer that's 125. And if you pass that deer, that was the dominant deer. That was the biggest deer in the property. You're not going to find another big deer. You know, so you kind of have to, every hunt that I go on, every state is different. I kind of have to set my expectations for that state, for that tag, for that area. What am I seeing? You know, and it is tough. Like if you got a buddy in Kansas that's not that far away from you passing the 150, you do kind of go, you know, I'd honestly, in your same scenario, I'd have probably done the same thing, and I'd have 8 tag safe too.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't from a lack of trying. I can guarantee you that. It's just, yeah.
And it also comes down to, you know, the love for the hunt is, for me anyway, is like huge. Because if I know I have 8 days allocated to a tag, like whatever state it is, if I know that I've sectioned off 8 days to hunt, and I tell myself, like, I'm not going to shoot a 130. Like this tag, I should be looking for a 145 plus. Okay. I go into that hunt and I have a 135, 140, whatever, give me an opportunity early. I might be more inclined to pass that deer early because I know I still have 6 days to hunt. And whether I eat tag soup or not, I want to live out 6 days of hunting in Kansas or hunting in wherever. It's like you get a tag that you look forward to. You want to kind of like ride that experience out, whether you kill something or not. You're just like, I want to see what's out there, you know?
Yeah.
You don't know.
Absolutely.
Who knows? You might run into a 190 in Kansas. I mean, realistically, you might run into a 180, 190 freak in Kansas, but you won't run into that deer if you shot something that you were like kind of borderline with early, you know?
Yeah, we use our O damn factor. If the bow levitates and just comes to your hand when you see him, you're like, it's meant to be.
You start shaking. Yeah, and that's a good point. There is a caliber of animal that every person will experience, and it'll be different for different people. But when you get to that caliber and you see it come out, you start shaking and you start reaching for your bow, shoot the deer, because that's where you're gonna regret that you didn't. Now, if that deer comes in and you're just kind of like, hey, that's a nice deer, but if you're having second guesses about it, like, man, spend the rest of your time hunting. Who cares if you eat tag soup? I mean, unless you want a freezer full of meat and that's your only tag, like, okay.
Kansas isn't cheap either. That's all I'm saying.
No, not at all. Kansas is rough, man. It's worth it though. Every year, I'm like, well, I'd pay that money again to go hunt again.
You know? I tried, but Kansas don't like me no more. They probably had like a deer like problem or something like that where they didn't want as many killed, so they didn't let me draw it this year.
They should have took your money. It was going to be free money and no strain on the resource.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. If 190 stepped out, that thing is scotch free. I ain't hitting that thing, guaranteed.
That's funny.
But
yeah. So I mean, have you done quite a bit of pronghorn hunting out in western Nebraska?
All of it. I've hunted antelope once in South Dakota. But otherwise, all of my antelope hunting has been in Nebraska, and I've killed 2 goats and I've gone almost every year.
They're not easy, are they?
No, not at all. Archery, dude, well, okay. I should put this into perspective. Where I have permission, like my good private spots that have big antelope, have a lot of antelope, it is all as dead flat as the eye can see for as long as the eye can see. So the antelope can see, like the stalking situation is awful, like terrible. No terrain to stalk whatsoever. It's either decoy or like if you can get up, the best stalking situation is if you can get up against like a pivot, because a lot of these fields have like center pivots. You can get up against a pivot and kind of work your way down, belly crawl, and, you know, use a pivot tire to your advantage or use a hay bale to your advantage or something like that. The other thing that is really, really tough where I hunt antelope is there are no water holes. So there's no like locating a water hole, setting a blind, there's no blind hunting where I'm at unless you're on some type of crossing or whatever, but there's no fences where I'm at. So there's no fence crossing. So it's just, it's really tough, but I keep going back because I keep seeing giant goat, and I see goat all day, every day. Like, there's no shortage of like getting footage. There's no shortage of having stalks and having a good time. It's just a really fun hunt. But it is very hard spot and stock, and there's no water hunting situations. That being said, like, there's either no water or there's so much water that you'll never be able to sit on the right one.
They're like drinking out of puddles or something.
Yeah, they'll drink out of everything. Like this year, I went out there and I scouted on my way back from the Colorado Total Archery Challenge, and there was water in like every other field. So in a situation like that, you for sure can't hunt them over water, because you'll never be sitting on the water hole that they come to. You know, they're going to use the most ease of access to get to water, just like a whitetail would, where they feel secure. If they feel secure, it's ease of access. They have like the advantage of, you know, both wind and sight. That's the hole that they're going to go to. Well, in Western Nebraska, where it's all flat, every water hole is that for them. They're always safe, you know? So it gets tough. But now, that being said, the last 2 years, I took my brother antelope hunting for the first year, my brother Ethan 2 years ago, and he shot a stud, like this freak goat that's got like 2 downturned horns, like crazy looking goat. Shoots a stud. And it's just like, and there's certain things that you can do with antelope that's just so much fun. Is like the stock that he put on that goat, it was like, man, we got to 300 yards belly crawling, and I'm like, it's bedded, but it was kind of bedded looking at us, and I'm like, there's no shot he's going to actually be able to get in range of this thing. So I decided to turn around and back out and try to find another, because Ethan was like, I want to sit on this one and just watch them and see what happens. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go try to find another group, you know, good luck. And before I turned around and started belly crawling out, I told him, I was like, by the way, because again, it was his first year antelope hunting. He didn't know a whole lot of just other than try to shoot one. And I was like, by the way, antelope are like super curious animals. So I said, if you don't think he's going to come towards you or get any closer or whatever, I said, give him the hat trick. Have you ever heard of the hat trick?
Yeah.
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 So you take your hat off and you wave it in the air. Like he was on a ridge, so it's like wave it on the ridge. Just give him enough to look at it and then put it away. You know, and then 20 minutes later, give him just enough where he might turn his head and look at it and then put it away. Like just enough to get his curiosity piqued, but not enough to like have him focus on what it is and know what it is. So anyway, I get a call like, I don't know, an hour later. I was on a stalk on some other goats. I get a call from Ethan, and he's like, dude, I got an arrow in him. You wouldn't believe it. The hat trick worked. He freaking did the hat trick from 300 yards out, and the goat came into like 60, and he shot him.
That's awesome.
I was like, what the heck? When I left, I was like, 0 chance. Like on the scale of chance, 0 chance he's killing this goat. And that's why I left. If I thought he had any chance of killing it, I'd have stayed with him and filmed. You know, but I was like, it's gonna blow. He's got to go on to the next one. But anyway, he goes, he calls me like, dude, the hat trick worked. He came right into 60 yards. I shot him. And anyway, and then so he shot one that year. The next year, which was last year, I ended up shooting a doe. I love antelope meat. And if an antelope is going to give me a shot opportunity and the tag calls for doe or buck, it's really hard for me not to shoot a doe because I love antelope meat, and they're very hard to kill anyway. Like shooting a mature antelope doe is just as hard, if not harder sometimes, than killing a buck, because the does aren't stupid, and they never are stupid. They're always alert. They're always on 10. And again, it comes down to like it comes down in a spot and stock situation. Over a water hole, I'd probably hold off, but it comes down to like the chase on those things. And anyway, that last year, Ethan shot his second goat, and it was like, this time it was a typical antelope, just very pretty. I think it was right underneath Pope and Young. Just gorgeous goat, and right place, right time. And he stalked in around there was like a big barn on the property, not a big barn, but it was like an old abandoned barn on the property. There's some hay bales stacked around it and tall weeds, and he stalked right to there, and the goat came in. And Ethan is a very, very good shot at long distance. I don't know if I want to say how long the shot was. I will just say he pinwheeled it, double lunged the goat, smoked it, and it was an incredible shot. But it came back to camp, and I'm like, dude, you killed 2 bucks, 2 years, 2 tags. Like, you're on a roll for antelope. So I've been calling him the Antelope King. So he's got to hold up to his name, because we leave for antelope. It's July 30th. We leave on the 19th. I think our season opens the 20th. We usually go a day ahead of time, get camp set up and everything. And so he's got some pressure this year. I'm like, 3 for 3, buddy. You're the Antelope King, kind of thing. So
got to live up to the name.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm going up to Northwest Nebraska myself to antelope hunt this year. I drew a tag as a non-resident, so it ought to be fun.
If you guys are anything like us, you love being in the deer woods and chasing big bucks. But there's another part of you that has that itch to chase other big game species.
If you've ever dreamed of chasing black bear, mule deer, or moose, Alberta, Canada is the land of opportunity for these adventure-style hunts.
Each year, hundreds of first-time visiting hunters from around the world come to Alberta for the options, quality, and accessibility that the land offers.
With over 1,800 Boone and Crockett entries and endless possibilities of taking multiple species on a single trip, Alberta is truly a paradise for a big game hunter. This is why we partnered up with the Alberta Professional Outfitters Society. To check it out, go to apos.ab.ca and click Find an Outfitter. From there, you can browse all the different big game species and hunting styles that fit with what you want out of the hunt.
Or you can send a free hunt inquiry through the Follow the Lead tool, and the outfitters who have what you are looking for will reach out to you directly.
So make sure to check out apos.ab.ca to learn all about hunting in Alberta and get connected to the right outfitter for you.
The Ogallala grasslands.
Yeah, that's like the only public up there, I think, there's a bunch of it, but which it's all spread out in a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be fun. We've hunted antelope a few times, and we've hunted them in the panhandle of Oklahoma. So there's a little more contour and some yucca bushes you can get behind, but
Sure.
I love hunting them with a decoy. And me and Jake were hunting this one buck that was a heart buck. I mean, he came up and almost touched. He was for sure a Pope and Young. And we walked up this little creek the whole way, and we're like, well, this is kind of the end of the road, because that grass is like your lawn in a lot of places. It's like 2 inches tall.
Yeah.
We pop up the decoy, and from like 300, he turns. It's like he walked, a couple times.
To be fair, he's seen us, and then we popped up the decoy.
Yeah. But he sprinted into what, 100, 125
well,
yards?
yeah, he was like at 275 or something like that, and he easily traveled like 100, 120 yards, like after seeing us, and then, oh, look, now they turned into an antelope. Like, that's crazy. But yeah, they are super curious. Long story short, we didn't get a shot, but we were also super like, we were idiots. We were like whitetail ranges, bow setups. Like, we had, I think our max pin was like 50 yards. And we were like, we don't know.
We had one at 75, and we were just like, God, he's out so far out of range. Like,
yeah. Both antelope that I've killed, the first one was 70, the second one was 76. I'll just say it, Ethan's goat was 103.
That's a poke.
That is the poke.
And he absolutely, anybody wants to argue Ethan's shot, come shoot with Ethan at 103 yards on a target, and you'll know why he took that shot. Like, he absolutely pinwheeled it. But yeah, for antelope, the distance is definitely it is a factor. You have to shoot a bow. Like, your average shot is going to be 50 to 60. So you kind of have to shoot and dial your setups and like be ready for like a 70 to 80. To be completely honest, like in a spot and stock scenario, right conditions, spot and stock. If you can get proficient at 70 to 80, your chances of killing an antelope go way up.
So that's a good segue, but and kind of into that same vein, what is your thoughts on kind of there's a whitetail distances, you're talking most whitetail shots are under 30 yards. And we have kind of this with TAC, with Shot to 3D Experience, Mountain Archery Fest, all these long range 3D kind of competitions, target ranges now, there's a lot more interest in shooting long range. Like, do you think do you like it? Do you love it? You want some more of it, or you kind of could take it or leave it? Do you enjoy shooting long range?
Here's my perspective on it. I know my effective range. I know what I'm comfortable with shooting at a given animal for the given scenario, given situation, angle of the shot, whatever. I know my capabilities. I have no room to talk or no room to judge or no room to say on anybody else's capabilities, because I am not that person and I'm not that shooter. Do I think people make shots that they shouldn't probably be taking? Yeah. Do I think people also wound deer at 20 yards? Yeah. So it's like, it's hard to say what is an ethical shot and what is not an ethical shot when how many deer across the country, how many animals across the country get wounded at 20 yards?
A lot.
Jump the arrow, dump out of the way, whatever, and make a bad shot at 20 yards. And, you know, to be honest, most of my longer shots that I've taken on animals, now whitetail, for instance, I think the furthest shot I've ever shot a whitetail is 47. Made a great shot, but I get a little leery with whitetail because they do drop. They have a tendency to drop, spin, get out of the way of the arrow. They're very fast. They're very alert. And
schizophrenia.
Yeah, they are tweaking at all times. And it's for me, like I say, a lot of it is the animal, the body language that the animal is giving off in that given moment at that given time. It's not just as, to me, it's not as generic as like, you shouldn't take a 70-yard shot. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't take a 70-yard shot, but I'll go hit a softball at 70 with every arrow in my quiver, and you can stand next to me and watch me do it. So where are we at with you shouldn't take that shot? You know what I mean? So it's kind of it's all subjective to the shooter, in my opinion. And I don't think anybody can necessarily judge somebody else's decision to make a shot based on their skill set, based on the scenario given, the animal's body language, the animal you're shooting at, the angle that it's at, the distance that it's at, the wind that's blowing left to right. Is it at your back going forward? It's very, very situational, but I do think people need to reel themselves in, where it's like, don't watch somebody else shooting and making a long shot and think that you can do that if you are not confident in doing that on the range. If you can sit on the range and make that shot 9 out of 10 times and you're very confident with it, all right, I have no reason to tell you not to do that. But if you watch somebody shoot 70 yards and they pinwheel it, and then you go on the range and you're like, yeah, oh yeah, he shot it at 70, I can shoot it at 70, and then you miss the entire target at 70, okay, your effective range ethically should probably be closer, but you don't really have a leg to stand on to tell the guy that's crushing it at 70 that he can't shoot 70. I just ask the guy who is shooting at 70 to be very conscious of the scenario, be very conscious of the wind, the body language of the animal, everything. I just think everybody needs to kind of stay in their own lane with that and know their own skill set and know, and even like as equal to the skill set, know how to read the body language of an animal. Because if it's going to get out of the way, sometimes it might not be a clean miss. If it moves to get out of the way, you might hit it in the hip. So there's a lot of different scenarios out there. That was long-winded, but hopefully
that was very well said. But also, just to add on to your point, like I think people need to also take into consideration, just because you can hit, a softball at 70 on your bag target or your 3D target out in your backyard doesn't necessarily mean that's your effective range on an actual animal, because your heart pumping a little bit more, maybe you're backcountry hunting and you're just fatigued, like whatever the situation is, like that might those two doesn't coincide at all times.
Yep. So, great example. The first mule deer hunt that I went on that I told you I missed that mule deer in the high country, missed him at 60, whatever the yardage was, 63, 64, 67. It was something in the 60s, right? Missed it. From that, I started working a lot more on like my cardio endurance because I didn't know Western hunts. I didn't know what I was getting into. I had a high heart rate. I tweaked my shot, missed the animal. When at home, I would have been able to make that shot, right? So I changed things up with making sure that I'm going into the hunt at peak physical condition with my cardio. Like this last 2 weeks, I've been running a 5K every day. So wake up, I go to the gym, I get my workout done. I usually am at the gym for about an hour. I do a high intensity training, like an AMRAP style training. And then directly after the gym, I go run a minimum of a 5K. So 3.1 miles or 3.1 miles all the way up to a 4 mile every single day. And I'm going to do that all the way up to season. By the time I get to season, my cardio, my heart rate in a high stress situation, my heart rate's like pretty low. Like it is still high. Don't get me wrong. I still have adrenaline, but it is like way more conditioned than I was back then. Back then, should I have taken that shot in hindsight? Maybe not. I missed it. I choked it, right? So maybe I shouldn't have taken that shot. Fast forward to 2020. Man, I am so bad. Do you guys ever get this? I am so bad on dates as to like when I killed a deer.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that? Like go back and think about like that was 2021. And then I'm like, no, that was 22. It's so bad. Anyway, several years later, I kept going out and kept hunting with Eric up in the high country. Several years later, shot a great buck. Shot was even further, 70 yards, completely calm, absolutely pinwheeled it right through the dead center of the heart. And it was a harder shot uphill, but I was more prepared than I was the first time I went out. Way better physical condition. The situation was better in terms of like, the deer was calm. He didn't know I was there. It was just like all the stars aligned, and I sent it right through the dead center of his heart, rolled down the hill and died. So it, again, even for myself, you bringing that up is perfect. Cause even for myself, that just shows the situation, what I did to correct the situation, the work I put in to get to where I can shoot that, and the perfect situation for the deer, because there's plenty of 70-yard shots that I'm not going to take because the deer's looking right at me. Zero chance I'm taking that shot,
Yeah.
But if he's calm and I know that sucker's not moving, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where I will take that shot. Whitetail, I go back and forth because they can hear an arrow coming from a freaking mile away, and they're very fast and they're skittish. Mule deer, a little bit different. Elk are definitely different. Elk are billboards. But you also have to look at penetration and everything else. So there's, like I say, I think everybody just needs to evaluate themselves and put a standard to their own shooting, and not just a blatant statement on social media that you shouldn't be shooting 60 yards on an animal. It's like, what animal? What scenario? What's your level of shooting? What's your arrow setup? What broadhead are you running? There's so many things. It's like, maybe you shouldn't be shooting at 60 yards, but like, I don't know. Maybe some guys can,
Yeah. Plus with antelope, it seems like if they even run and stump their toe, it's like, they're probably going to die. They just seem like weak boned to me.
They are weak. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
They're fairly frail, but that's not to say, even with an antelope, I don't want to just shoot just to hit them. I want to shoot to pinwheel them,
right?
Because I don't want to hit them back and then have to run them down and chase them and make it suffer any more than it does. And I am very, very conscious on like I have taken some far shots. I've also killed a lot of animals like with perfect shots at far distances. So it's hard for me to be like that Kansas deer, dude. Absolutely pinwheeled that deer in Kansas. I think it was a 40-yard shot. Never found it. So like stuff happens is what I'm saying. And it's like, I've shot some things at distance that were very ethical. The end result was very quick. you know, and I've never, there was only one scenario where I took a shot at distance where distance wasn't even the factor. I read the body language wrong on the animal. And it wasn't even that it was alert, whatever. It was that I thought it was quartering away and it was broadside and I hit too far back. My elevation was perfect. I hit right behind my pin. I mean, that arrow buried right behind my pin. I just hit it too far back because I thought it was quartered and he was straight broadside. So stuff like that, again, that comes down to scenario. I didn't make a bad shot at the distance. I judged the animal wrong. I judged his body language wrong. And I take full responsibility for that. And I learn from it and I do better the next time. And I think that's a big takeaway is like people need to, again, just stay in your own lane, keep building, keep learning on shooting animals, shooting your bow, scenarios, given situations, because there's not just one like pick it out of a hat distance that should apply to every archer. Because again, it goes back to guys like Levi Morgan. So take this for instance. If I put an apple on my head and I go stand out on the range and the guy online telling me not to shoot over 30 yards is shooting at me with that apple on my head, I have to trust that guy at 30 yards. And I'm not even kidding you. Or I have to trust Levi Morgan at 120. I'm picking Levi Morgan. That's a difference between 30 yards and 120 from the guy on the internet to Levi Morgan. I would rather have Levi Morgan shoot an apple off my head at 120 than a random Joe Blow at 30.
Well, what about the Joe Blow's crossbow? It's dialed at 30.
Hey, that's dialed. Uh-oh. But hopefully that's like an analogy of like, there's so much variance based on skill set and based on, your ability to read the animal and read the nervousness and stuff. Shoot, I'd be so nervous at the guy shooting at 30, I'd probably duck into his arrow.
Probably.
With Levi, I'd be like, Levi's got this, man. We're good.
Yeah, that's leaving it up in God's hands. I mean, you're still at the end of the day, you're hunting with a sharp stick, right? Yep. So you can't control all the variables. But I think each individual, like you said, I like what you said, because each individual knows the work that they've put in. They know what a feasible shot for them is, right? There's been times where I've drawn my bow back on a deer and I'm like, this is not in my wheelhouse, you know? And like I did it at 50 one time. My pin was like this, moving off of him. And I was like, that's not me. And I put it down. He walked into 40 and I shot him and it worked. But I think everybody deep down, if they were to examine their heart, they know the work they've put in and they know their range. And it's just, are you willing to push it or not? Right.
One thing I will say about distance, know your effective range for your initial shot, right? Put all the work you can in to be as effective as you possibly can. If you have the opportunity, and I don't know if I've had one opportunity where I had an opportunity to make a follow-up shot. But if you have an opportunity to make a follow-up shot, I don't care how good of an archer you are at whatever distance, get an arrow down range and try to get it in that animal. If he's like having problems getting away, whatever, if he's calm and he lays down, okay, maybe try to stock up and get a better shot in him. But if you have an opportunity where it's like it's slipping away, you have no other opportunity, try to get another arrow in that animal. I'm not going to judge anybody for distance on a follow-up shot, because I think the more arrows in the animal, the better if you're worried about it getting away, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Joel, I think we kept you long enough. I know we're going on the 2-hour mark, but before we go, I have a question. So what we tend to do towards the end of it, we like to ask the guest, what's that one encounter or blown opportunity that still haunts you to this day? And I know you have a variety of species under your belt, so you can think a little bit on it. But while you do, the reason we ask this question is just because you know how outdoor television is, and sometimes YouTube, it's almost like a highlight reel sometimes. And the new people coming into the sport, if that's what they see, that's kind of what they expect, and they have the wrong mindset going into the woods, right? So what's that one, again, blown encounter or missed shot opportunity that it should have worked out, but it just didn't go in your favor?
Honestly, it's probably passing that deer that would have been my biggest deer at the time because I wanted to have it on film.
Yeah.
I still that, and that's why I say it ingrained so heavily in me, because I keep going back to that. That's like, why did I do that? Like, it's one of those things, like, if I could take it back, dude, I'd have pinwheeled that sucker and just let the audio run on the camera, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was a perfect, I mean, he walked through broadside in my shooting lane, and like, it was the dumbest thing ever. So if I were to take one back, like, that would be up. I'm sure there's a few, but that would be up on the list for sure. It's like, I should have shot that deer. So
yeah, it happens, which it's all learning experience, and it's okay to fail, I guess, if you learn from it. Now, 100%. Me, on the other hand, you can ask my wife. I tend to not do that. So, but slowly I'm learning. Slowly.
You got to fail a few times,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Dude, I'm still slicing my golf ball off the drive like crazy.
Dude, don't even get me started on golf.
I keep going back, and I haven't learned a dang thing.
I hate that sport. I can't have more than one hobby. That's why I suck at golf too. At least what I tell myself.
I know.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate you doing this. I got one last question for you. I mean, you talked about it earlier. You were, God-fearing man, follower of Christ. We are too. I mean, it takes, obviously, I don't know if you got into this to do it full time or you ever had that intention. That I don't know. But did you ever think that you'd be where you are right now? Did you ever think that God would open the doors that he has to let you do what you're doing right now? Because one of the things that changed my entire mindset about God was he can use what I love the most to glorify him the most. And that kind of broke through a fourth wall with me. But I'm curious from your side.
I feel the exact same thing. And to answer the question, no, not even a chance. Like, there wasn't even, when I started all this, I started it more for fun. And I wanted to sell a few t-shirts to make a little additional income in order to, like, maybe buy an extra tag. Like, it was not, I did not think this was even achievable. At the time, I thought you had to have a TV show, and I don't have $300,000 to pony up for a slot, I would have loved to do outdoor TV. I would have loved to do anything outdoor related, just so that I'm, like, doing what I love for my job. Or at least, like, in the same spectrum. But to answer their question, no, I did not think it would get to this point. I did not think I could make, like, a living out of it. I didn't think I could change, like, and I'm not trying to say it in any type of, like, puff in my chest way or anything, but, like, change people's lives for the better. I have saved, screenshotted, and just kept for myself to look back on, like, my why as to, like, why I'm doing some of this stuff, like putting this content out and stuff. But there's literally people, like, I had a kid call in, like, message me on Instagram. I ended up just doing, like, a video call with him and praying with him, because it was like he was at a really bad point in his life, and he saw that I was a God-fearing man, and he hooked on to that, and he followed and whatever, and ended up praying with him. And it's just stuff like that that's, like, life-changing stuff. People saying they lost 30, 40 pounds, whatever, just watching the stuff, getting inspired by doing this stuff. Again, taking their kids out hunting, getting back into hunting. People have told me all sorts of different stories where it's, they always hunted with their father passed away. They get to go out. Now they have, like, kind of more of a joy of going out because they see how much I enjoy it. And it's just, there's just so many stories that I've seen come in that I wouldn't have, like, that's not me, that's God. And I'm completely on the same page with you in terms of, like, God has placed me in a position to have a voice. That voice is to glorify God in all things that I do, whether it's not directly through, a lot of times I do like posting scripture on my story or posting comments or on my feed with something along the lines of scripture, but just talking with people through direct message who need it, who reply to a story of scripture. And then it's like, oh, then we get on start talking about things because they replied to that story, and I can tell their heart's open to accepting talking about that type of stuff. And it is really, really cool to see that, and really cool to just know that God has put me in a position to like glorify him. And yeah, I'm completely with you on that, man. It is really, really cool. I didn't think I would get to where I'm at right now, you know, financially, career wise, whatever. I'm really glad I did. I'm very thankful that I did, but it's all God. It's not me. None of it.
Boast only in the cross. Let's go.
That's right.
You're taking what you love and using it as a Trojan horse for something bigger. And I think that's what everybody needs to do, with whether it be hunting or if you like soccer, football, whatever it is. And yeah, I think that's a big lesson to learn.
Dude, the amount of, like, over the duration of having this brand and growing the channel and stuff, the amount of times that I've sat down and prayed just about, like, give me guidance to be the man that I need to be in order to glorify you through everything I'm doing. And it's because, dude, there's so much in this world. Like you said, the devil is ever present, and anymore, like, he's very, very, he's everywhere, man. So it's really cool to see the trajectory that God has given me and the path that he's given me. So it's yeah, I love it. Dude, I even met my girlfriend, Alyssa, on social media, that I wouldn't have met her. I wouldn't have met her had I not started the hunting channel thing and doing social, because to be completely honest, if I didn't have like the hunting side of the social media stuff, like, I probably wouldn't be on social media. I just like am not I wouldn't really care to be, I guess. But I love hunting so much, and I have such a passion for like the content creation. I could see myself still being on YouTube because I like the filming side of stuff, but like the social media side, like, whatever. But anyway, met my girlfriend Alyssa on there, and it's just like, I think back to that, it's like, I mean, everything has aligned. I wouldn't have met her had I not had the social media channel and like all this stuff. Like, it was a really fun way, the way that we met, and it was just like, everything's aligning. Like, God's got it all figured out, you know? I think
he does.
Just when I think I've got things figured out, God's like, oh, by the way, here's this girl. She's really cool. You know, you should go talk to her.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, like we said, we appreciate you jumping on, man. But where's the best place for people to watch your stuff, consume your content, and connect with you?
So YouTube is definitely my main like channel, above all, and then Instagram. So YouTube is just Whitetail Fit. If you just type in Whitetail Fit, it'll show up. Instagram is Whitetail_fit, and sometimes you do have to, depending on the time of the year, you do have to type it all in, like Whitetail_FIT, and then it'll pop up, because every now and then Instagram likes to shadow ban me. I don't know if I am right now or not, but sometimes that's part of the shadow ban, is like a search. You have to type in every letter like until it pops up. And then the website is whitetailfit.com, and I sell hats, t-shirts, hoodies, arrow wraps, vanes, select hunting gear and stuff. Like, I've got a tent and sleeping bag and stuff that I like that I sell on there. But really anywhere, if you just go to Google and type in Whitetail Fit, pretty much everything will pop up. So,
sweet.
I always thought your handle was scrawny guy with a bow. I typed that in one time. I see your face. I didn't know.
Scrawny bow guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well,